The orthomyxoviruses are large, enveloped, negative sense strand RNA viruses. So you'll need to remember what we talked about when we talked about paramyxoviruses for how these viruses go from a negative sense strand RNA to a positive sense strand RNA. One of the really unique things about the orthomyxoviruses is that they have segmented genomes, and this isn't something that we've encountered before. With all of our other viral infections, we've been looking at genomes that are a single piece of nucleic acid. In the case of our orthomyxoviruses, we're looking at genomes that are segmented into 8 pieces. We could almost call them like chromosomes, like 8 chromosomes. What this allows for is a phenomenon called reassortment or antigenic shift. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail in just a bit. The most common orthomyxovirus is Influenza A. So flu viruses are orthomyxoviruses. Influenza A tends to be a cause of pandemics. One of the things that I think is really interesting when we think about the history of infectious diseases is that, especially prior to the development of like modern medicine, antibiotics, better hospitalization, improved public health, etc., more people died of infections than died like during wartime. And so you might have heard of the Spanish flu. This was a flu outbreak in 1918 and 1919, and more people died of the flu than during battle in World War I. So it's one of those that it's really interesting to be, and I don't mean interesting in an exciting way, I mean interesting in an interesting way, to be living during a pandemic now and think about how did people live during a pandemic then. And a lot of the pictures we see are people wearing masks, even back then, people quarantining. So a lot of those strategies that were used back then are helpful now. I think people are a little bit more, I'm trying to think of a nice way to say this. Let's say politicized about it now than they used to be. But, you know, things that work still work. And luckily now we at least have vaccines. Human disease can also be caused by influenza B and C, but A is more common, especially as a cause of pandemics. Here are some pictures, like electron micrographs and cartoons of what the flu virus looks like. So you have this enveloped virus with all of these proteins on the surface, including proteins like hemagglutinin, which will become important in just a minute, and neuraminidase, H and N. So when you start talking about the flu, H, N, remember that. You have these little curly cues that represent the genome. Okay. So when we have replication of an orthomyxovirus, we do get some involvement of the nucleus instead of just the cytoplasm. So in the nucleus, we'll get the transcription from the negative sense RNA to the positive RNA, and then a replication of that. So they have their own enzymes that allow them to do that. And then the virus uses neuraminidase to help escape the infected cell. Okay, so remember that, and I'll tell you about hemagglutinin also in just a minute. The flu is something that I imagine most of us have had. You have an aerosol transmission of the virus, it replicates in the respiratory tract, and you get the immune response, which includes antibodies and T-cell response to provide future protection against that particular strain. But you have these T-cell responses and the production of interferon. So you have these systemic responses that lead to influenza syndrome. I think we all know the symptoms of the flu: cough, tired, achy, fever, right? And all of that is a combination of destruction of host cells, production of interferon, and T-cell responses. Now, what they're showing you with these dashed lines are more rare complications. The majority of patients who get the flu recover just fine, but some people can develop viral pneumonia, so a much more significant infection in the lower parts of the lungs. Some patients can have the virus and the immune response lead to damage to the central nervous system or muscles. And sometimes patients can develop a secondary bacterial infection that can lead to pneumonia. So the flu is not something that we should take lightly. Generally, it's a relatively short incubation period before feeling that systemic disease. Within a day or two in the lab, you can detect the virus in respiratory secretions. Within about a week or so, you can detect the rise in virus-specific antibodies. Within a couple of days, you'll get interferon induction, and that's what's going to lead to the systemic disease. About a week or so, you can see changes in the respiratory tract. And convalescence, you'll see, can extend sometimes like 2-3 weeks after the real bulk of the disease is over. So I got the flu back in 2020. It was like, it was President's Day weekend. I remember because I was teaching microbiology, and Dr. Gousset came to do an observation of my class that day, and I just felt really wiped. And she said, well, I can do your observation another day. And I was like, it's a 3-day weekend. I'll be fine. Come do my observation. So spoiler, I was not fine. I was very sick. I was very unhappy. I laid in bed for a few days, the whole long weekend. And eventually I started to feel better. Of course, I felt better just in time to go back and teach my classes again the next week. And so because of the timing of that February, like mid to late February of 2020, I wondered if I had had COVID. And the reason I thought COVID instead of the flu is because I had been vaccinated against the flu. I got my vaccine that year. I get my vaccine almost every year. That year, my mom literally dragged me. I was visiting my parents one day to Target and was like, here, get your vaccine. And I said, okay, so I did it. So I had been vaccinated. I thought, well, maybe it was COVID because this weird virus is going around. It had been seen in Fresno by that point. And it turned out I went and got tested for antibodies for COVID later, that I never had COVID. So it was the flu. So now the thing that is important, and the reason I'm telling you this story, is because I just told you I was vaccinated against the flu. And the flu vaccine works pretty well against the most common strains we expect to see. So I probably got a different strain. Why are there so many strains? Why do I have to get vaccinated against the flu every year? Well, the reason for that is because of that segmented genome that the flu has. So I told you it's almost like they have chromosomes. There are 8 of them. So a particular variety of the flu, this is like real data here. So there was a particular swine flu, a particular human flu, and a particular avian flu. And these have all kind of been tracked back, so that's why these things are known. And this unlucky pig somehow was infected with all 3 of these strains. And what you can see is that eventually it's a lot like sexual reproduction or independent assortment. Where do the chromosomes go? Well, eventually this pig here ended up with avian chromosome 1, human 2, avian 3, human 4, swine 5, human 6, swine 7, swine 8. Here was this other pig that had these different versions, right? It had swine 4 instead of human 4. And then here's a Eurasian swine, so it's ES. And then this pig ended up with avian 1, human 2, avian 3, swine 4, swine 5, Eurasian swine 6, Eurasian swine 7, swine 8, and then this one popped up into humans in 2009. And those of you who remember 2009, this was H1N1, swine flu, big panic. Okay. This happens every year. And so scientists do their best to predict which one's going to come through. And they usually make a cocktail of what they think are probably the 3 most common strains. That's the vaccine. And lucky for me, I got, number 4 that wasn't in the vaccine. So it happens. The flu vaccine does not cause the flu. That is physiologically impossible. If you get the injection, it's a killed virus. It literally can't come back alive. It's not a zombie. If you get a nasal mist, which is offered not every year, but sometimes, that one is alive attenuated. So you might have a little bit more severe symptoms after getting the vaccine, but it's still not the flu. It doesn't revert, not like polio. So our acute onset of our flu symptoms, fever, tiredness, muscle pain, sore throat, and a non-productive cough. So when we differentiate flu-like symptoms versus cold-like symptoms, basically with flu-like symptoms, we're adding the fever and the muscle pain, like that more full body involvement, whereas a cold tends to be only upper respiratory symptoms. So that's going to be an important differentiator for you. For children, when they get the flu, they can sometimes have GI symptoms as well, so abdominal pain and vomiting. Children are more likely to develop ear infections following any viral infection just because of the anatomy of the eustachian tubes. So always keep a lookout on your pediatric patients if they have any viral infection, but particularly the flu, because that can happen. And then there are more rare complications that you would definitely want to be looking for in your pediatric patients or any of your elderly patients or anyone who's immune compromised. Flu is most often diagnosed by symptoms, seasons, and presence in the community. So most people will treat the symptoms of the infection. Like, I have a high fever, I'm going to take a fever inhibitor. I have a cough, I'm going to take a cough suppressant. I have a sore throat, I'll take cough drops, whatever, right? They treat whatever symptoms they're feeling. So there are drugs you can take. The one that you might have heard of is Tamiflu. But the problem is you have to take those drugs basically like early in the infection because it's so quick that you start to experience symptoms. So often by the time you experience symptoms, it's already too late to take Tamiflu. For Tamiflu, you can't have had symptoms for more than 2 days. So I don't know about you, but again, I've never been able to get a doctor's appointment that quickly. So Tamiflu is a neuraminidase inhibitor. And so what Tamiflu does is it basically prevents the virus from being able to escape infected cells because neuraminidase is necessary for them to escape infected cells. The other protein I told you about was hemagglutinin. Hemagglutinin is a surface protein on the viral particles that allows them to attach to host cells. So that's generally one of the important targets for antibody, because if antibody can bind the hemagglutinin, the antibody can prevent the virus then from binding to the host cell. As of right now, there are a few therapies that target hemagglutinin, but it's a very, very attractive target for continued therapy development. And then, of course, vaccination is recommended annually because there's always a different mix going around. So the CDC, this was from 2019, warns that flu season is getting an early start. Upstate Mom encourages people to get their flu shots. This was from New York, where a woman lost her teenage son to flu complications. Generally, what we see every year is, depending on the year, depending on the strain, between 9 million and 35 million cases in the US, leading to anywhere from 140 to 710 100,000 hospitalizations and 12 to 56,000 deaths. We did have a relatively severe flu season in 2017, 2018, 49 million estimated cases, almost a million hospitalizations, and 79,000 deaths. So that's a lot higher than we normally see. And one of the other, one of my favorite conspiracy theories, I don't like conspiracy theories. I'm not a conspiracy theory person, but that was going around, oh, now we have COVID, but we don't have the flu. Where did the flu go? The flu went away. And I'm like, well, the flu went away because everybody was wearing masks. Everybody was staying home. Nobody was touching each other. Like, that's where the flu went. If you don't have contact, if you're not going out in public, if you're not, breathing somebody else's gross air, it's really hard to transmit the flu. Once everything started kind of opening up again, people stopped wearing masks, we're back to a normal flu season. So do your due diligence and get vaccinated against the flu whenever possible.